Hello and welcome to the NDTV Dialogues, a conversation of ideas. Tonight we're discussing nationalism, an idea which seems to have come central to our discourse. Or is it about neo-nationalism? Is it about no longer being shy of saying India first? Is it about standing up for the national anthem in a cinema? Or is it about being anti-national if you oppose demonetization? To discuss this and what the central core of why this has become such a key issue in 2016, I'm joined by Dr. Lokesh Chandra, head of the Indian Council of Cultural Relations. I'm also joined by Professor Ashish Nandi, well-known political theorist, author. I'm joined by Sudhanshu Trivedi of the BJP, and also from Kolkata, Amit Chaudhary, well-known author. Thank you all very much for being part of this. Professor Nandi, let me begin by asking you, since this is a topic you've written about often as well, the concept of nationalism. Why do you think in 2016 it has suddenly taken center stage in our political discourse? In fact, it's almost replaced the buzzword secularism in the UPA years, and now in the BJP it's nationalism. Why is it so key?
Well, because in India we don't distinguish between nationalism and patriotism. Nationalism stands for both. Whereas nationalism is a very new word. It came into use in the 17th century in Europe. Patriotism was there since time immemorial, and even in case of patriotism, there is a saying that it's the last refuge of all scoundrels, and nationalism is no different. It has always been the last refuge of scoundrels. I am a student of genocide and have been studying genocide in recent centuries, and at least in 20th century, for which full data is available, nationalism accounts for the maximum number of loss of human life.
Are we seeing a neo-nationalism now? It's almost kind of a more, it's a different version, because I don't think it's, you're talking about genocide. I think perhaps what we're seeing now is something which obsesses itself more on trivial issues, like standing up for a national anthem, like whether someone says Bharat Mata Ki Jai. Is it a different kind? Is it a neo-nationalism?
Yes, but that also is not very new. Mussolini experimented with such things, I must say, and so did number of other Latin American despotic rulers, because there is something to be gained by emphasizing that. And even in China, some of the dissenters tell me that nationalism has defeated communism, not neoliberalism or any other form of democratic ideology.
That's interesting. So the power of nationalism. Let me just bring in Sudhanshu Trivedi on that, because let me put it in a way that perhaps Dr. Nandi's ideas are not ideas which are fashionable anymore. And one thing people will say about the BJP is that you all have brought nationalism to the center stage and you've made it something to be proud about. Would you agree with that? And do you say that when people say nationalism or patriotism is the last refuge of scoundrels, what would you say to that?
Actually, if we look at the concept of nationalism, it is having two type of concepts. One is a politico-territorial nation. It means one political power governing one piece of land, and this is nation. On the other hand, we believe in geocultural nationalism. It means one set of thought and tradition or culture which inspires the people for generations, and that becomes the bonding factor of nationalism.
Even with a multicultural society?
Yes, of course. Because if you look at India, it is one of the rarest example of multicultural society. Forget about various religions. If you know that how many sects of Islam are there? 72 sects of Islam are there. And India is the only country in the world in which all the 72 sects are there. No other country. Zoroastrians are only there in India. The Jews are not only country in the world in which they never faced any persecution. Forget about persecution, even discrimination. This was because of our cultural heritage, which we consider as a backbone of nationalism, which gives us benevolence, or we do not want to control over others. India is the only country, major country in the world, which was having capability, but never went for annexation of any other country, never went for invasion. Why? You know, from the time of Sri Ram, when he captured Lanka, he has not annexed Lanka. He has just put up a person from there and put it on the place. And the same was the case from Muhammad Ghori and Prithviraj Chauhan.
So you would
till the day we have created Bangladesh, but we didn't want to control Bangladesh. So, that is why these are the thoughts which we consider the part of nationalism. Yes, of course, but when you go on a very eccentric political nationalism thought which was there in Russia, Stalin, Mao's China, Pol Pot's Cambodia and other things, definitely what Professor Nandi was saying can be true to a certain extent in that aspect.
So, you are saying it is a very different kind of nationalism we see here. Let me just get in Professor Lokesh Chandra, now head of the ICCR, because when we so often talk about nationalism as a part of our culture, would you see that today, would you see nationalism as an inclusive idea and an ethos? Why do you think people say that nationalism is associated with a political thought, it is about a political ideology?
Our nationalism, because of the pluralistic base of our thinking, you know, most of our perceptions are binary. They are not monistic, they are not, you know, the plural is the more accepted norm than the singular. So, there is no monocentrism in Indian thought anywhere, and that we derive from nature.
Amit Chaudhary, when we talk about words and the interesting discourse we have had so far is the different meanings of nationalism. Is it different in the Indian context? I am asking also about neo-nationalism. What we are seeing in 21st century a kind of hybrid perhaps of what nationalism was originally meant to be or thought to be perhaps at the time of our freedom struggle, at the time of European freedom struggles happening with various rulers. What is the nationalism that we are seeing today in India around us? How would you describe it?
Well, I wouldn't describe it as nationalism. And I think, I mean, I myself am wary of nationalism, but I feel I'm becoming forced to be a nationalist in order to reappropriate this word, which I never had any interest in. But the kind of people who have appropriated this word and the violence with which they're using it makes me think that the word needs to be redefined and reappropriated, and that any act of opposition to this coercion and violence is a form of nationalism today. Because for me, as I said, I said in a piece I wrote last week for the Times of India, to some people it might almost seem that sitting down during the national anthem in a context of vigilantism and a vigilante kind of thuggery, where people are beaten up if they don't stand up, to some people it might seem that sitting down for the national anthem is an act of protest, and it's an act of protest to express solidarity with an idea of the nation which is important to us, which is a tolerant and free nation.
Let me ask Sudhanshu Trivedi, because of course interestingly this was a Supreme Court judgment, and the petition was also filed by an ordinary individual. So in that sense it had nothing to do with the BJP, though of course the BJP has welcomed this judgment. But let me take this as one example, and the point he is making, that in a way being allowed to do what you want, in as long as it is respectful in a sense to the Constitution, a freedom of expression is central to the idea of the Indian Constitution. So when you are actually enforcing things like this, you are enforcing respect, it violates the idea of nationalism. And this doesn't mean that he or anyone else disrespects the national anthem, but that's the question.
Two things. One, whether he is opposed to the basic fundamental concept or to the misuse. If you want to go by misuse, then there are n number of things which are misused.
No, I think he's
the
opposed to the idea of
SC/ST Act misused, the Dowry Act is misused, the Domestic Violence is misused, and the recently modified Rape Act is misused. Then you do not say that do away with this. If you are going against the concept, then I would like to ask, if the national anthem is being played and somebody is not standing, and if somebody standing by you are saying please stand up, still you are not standing, what does this mean? During our school days, if the national anthem is played and any boy or girl is not standing up, he or she was scolded or not? Say yes or no. If it was there, then has to be some sort of pressure. You say there has to be a limit of freedom of expression. For example, if the President of India comes,
yes,
it is not written in the Constitution, but when it is said, Honorable President is coming, we please stand up, and somebody is not standing, is it not showing disrespect to the President?
But I don't think his...
So, yes. I think he is little bit, he is not able to, you can say, clearly define what is the line between the concept and use. And one more thing, he has used the word tolerant. Tolerance is a very peculiar word used in the context of nationalism. I can say with full authority, or you can say full conviction rather than, that tolerance is a Western concept. Indian concept is mutual respect, because tolerance is, I do not like you, still I tolerate you. I hate you, still I tolerate you. In India, it's not. We are having mutual respect. That's why all the religions are there in India, because if we are saying that X religion is having X messenger, we are having no problem, because we believe in n number of messengers will come in an infinite number of time. So we can have mutual respect. But when somebody says this is the only and this is the final and ultimate, then he is having problem in having mutual respect, because he cannot have mutual respect for other. Then he had to only be tolerant.
I think
so that's why, as Professor was saying, there are certain Western concepts which we try to impose on Indian concepts.
I always find, I think the most interesting thing is the different perspectives, and I think Amit, anything you want to say?
Standing up for the national anthem is a ritual observance. Okay, it's to do with a particular ritual associated to show and express respect for the nation, for the flag at that point of time. Strictly speaking, in the adult world of rational human beings, we might want to take part in this ritual, but not taking part in the ritual, or electing not to take part in the ritual, doesn't necessarily mean, or one shouldn't infer that it means a lack of respect or a lack of interest in the nation, which also, by the way, should be legitimate emotions or experiences for any national not to have an interest in the nation or to be indifferent to it. That is also a legitimate part of citizenry, and has been a part of this country's history, to be indifferent to the nation. Any number of literary texts show an indifference to the nation. They are not, the authors are not in jail because of that. Now, but I'm talking about people who are not indifferent to the nation, but have a deep sense of love and respect for the nation, but might not want to take part in a ritual observance. And not taking part in this ritual observance should not be construed as being disrespectful or unloving. And I've heard some bits of the earlier discussion where we've talked about the multifariousness, historic multifariousness of India. And one needs to add to that India's strong and powerful history of rejecting ritual observance. There is also a very, very strong history in the Bhakti tradition, but also going back to the Gita, with the Bhagavad Gita, which Sushma Swaraj reads every day. I've mentioned these passages in relation to Hinduism and how we view it, but I want to I want to read a couple of very short passages from the Gita about the Vedas in relation to how we are thinking of nationalism and ritual observance as a part of expressing nationalistic a love of the nation. So here's the first one. There is a reward that comes from the Vedas, says Krishna, or from sacrifice, from an austere life, or from holy gifts, but a far greater reward is attained by the yogi who knows the truth of light and darkness. He attains his everlasting home. This is the first one. And the second one, again Krishna speaking to Arjun, not by the Vedas or an austere life or gifts to the poor or ritual offerings can I be seen as thou hast seen me. Only by love can men see me and know me and come unto me. Both of these passages, the second one in a more powerful way than the first one, in a more explicit way, reject the idea that only by observing certain rituals and by reading the Vedas can we attain this knowledge of who Krishna is. Okay? Or who God is.
That's an interesting
This is in the domain of religion.
No, that's an interesting answer. I think really
the same thing applies to
Yes.
the national anthem and to ritual observance in the domain of our everyday lives in the nation today.